There is a lot to cover from EICMA 2024. I've been waiting to do this video because I wanted all the news to come in. And guess what? It is not just Chinese motorcycles. It's not just EVs. We have a ton of new and exciting motorcycles we're going to talk about in today's video. Why don't we start off with possibly the spiciest announcement, the new Ducati Panigale V2. Truthfully, I thought that the Panigale V2 was headed to the wood chipper. I didn't really foresee Ducati bringing out a brand new Panigale V2 and Street Fighter V2 and making S editions of each model as well. Definitely wasn't on my bingo card. The supersport category is evolving and cementing and crystallizing in the form of the Yamaha R9, the Ducati Panigale V2, and the KTM RC990. All around 900-ish cc's, all sub $15,000-ish. The Ducati's a little bit more if you get the S trim. But we're really seeing this category come together. This is a super exciting time. And funny enough, the new Ducati V2 pissed off just enough Ducati fanboys as the Yamaha R9 did, because everyone's up in arms with the fact that it makes less peak horsepower. Oh no. Guys, this actually isn't a bad thing, and let me explain why. So the Ducati Panigale V2 is still one of the only bikes in the category that is bespoke designed as a super sport. The Yamaha R9 shares an MT-09 components. The KTM 990 is from the Duke 990, the RC 990. The Ducati really began life as a sport bike, and Ducati has pedigree building V-twin proper supersport machines. And it's following the same formula as the Yamaha R9 in that it wants track performance, but blending some street manners as well. The new Panigale is a little more comfortable to ride, which is no bad thing. It's also the lightest Panigale ever at just a hair under 400 pounds ready to ride. That is very lightweight. It has a brand new 890cc V-twin engine that is Euro 5 Plus compliant. It's capable of 120 horsepower and 69 foot-pounds of torque. Now, those power figures are very similar to what we used to see in the 600 Supersport category, but with way less weight and way more accessible low-down grunt. And this new motor is probably going to be cross-platform with a bunch of other Ducati products as well. Don't be surprised if this 890 makes its way into new multi-stratas, maybe a new Supersport variant, although it kind of seems like that Supersport's probably going to the wood chipper. You get 70% of the available torque at 3,000 RPM and 80% of it at 4,000 RPM, meaning this thing's going to be grunty off an apex and on your morning commute. I'm really bullish on this new Panigale. I think it's pretty sweet. It's got tons of standard features and electronics, pretty good spec suspension for stock, and then the S trim also comes with an Öhlins shock outback, which of course is par for the course for Ducati. The V2S also comes with the Öhlins NIX30 fork as well, which is a pretty high spec fork to come on a super sport machine. The V2 is going to come in at $15,995 in base trim and almost $19,000 in S trim. But for my money, that base V-twin is pretty sweet. I think I would take a Panigale V2 all day. Of course, let me know in the comments which of these EICMA releases were your favorites. I want to gauge interest and see which bikes I should do as giveaways. I already have a deposit on an R9, but should I get a V2 as well? It's looking pretty spicy. All right, speaking of Yamaha, we have a new MT-07. We really need to talk about this one because this is probably going to be a huge bestseller for Yamaha. The MT-07 was starting to look a little long in the tooth and was desperate for a substantial update in the face of competition from Suzuki, Honda, and everybody else trying to gun for that entry-level middleweight category. I think the Triumph Trident especially was the #1 competition. It's featuring the same 689cc parallel twin, the CP2 found in the old MT-07. The engine is mechanically identical as far as I can tell, but with some new intake systems that allow for enhanced sound. It's still making right around 73 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque. But this model can now be equipped with the new YAMT automatic transmission that features cruise control as well. This was something that I didn't really see coming the last few years in motorcycling, as so many manufacturers trying to implement automatic transmissions in hopes of acquiring new riders who maybe are a little scared about the clutch lever. The new MT-07 features an update on the tubular steel frame with a new swing arm as well that should provide more rigidity. The MT-07 was known for a little bit of its slop. Hopefully paired with the 41mm inverted fork up front, the MT-07 is now going to actually handle like a proper middleweight bike and not all kind of sloppy and soft like it used to. It features features lighter wheels and bodywork and lighter components to balance out the new electronic weight, and this motorcycle actually still comes in at a very respectable sub 410 pound wet and ready to ride. The MT-07 now features ride-by-wire throttle, which allows for quite a few electronic updates. You have different rider modes now, and I kind of have to wonder why they didn't include cruise control in the MT-07 manual edition. That would have been an awesome feature that makes this motorcycle even better as an all-day commuter. And the new design is definitely inspired by the new MT-09. It's kind of fitting in the mold here, and I am just patiently waiting for the MT-10 to receive this design update, because then finally I think we'll have a motorcycle that is worthy, because I think the MT-10 is so ugly. This is a really important and meaningful update in the category. A lot of motorcycles are gunning for this sub $10,000 middleweight category, like the Triumph Trident, even the Z650s, RS660s. There's so many bikes in this category, it's hard to even keep track of, but the MT-07 can still retain its crown because of that lovable CP2 engine, bulletproof reliability, and an update now that kind of makes the motorcycle feel like it's part of the 2024 class. Speaking of another hotly contested category, we have the beginner sport category, specifically in the 450cc range. It was kind of obvious that Aprilia was going to do this, but we now have the covers lifted on the Tuono 457. Now, I heaped tons of praise on the RS457 for an Indian-built bike by Aprilia as their first at-bat at the entry-level category. They really knocked it out of the park. It really will remain to be seen if the reliability of that motorcycle is good, but I think for now, it's a really, really sweet bike that really cuts itself as a proper baby super sport. And the Tuono 457 is going to take all those same bones and pretty much just apply them in a slightly baby naked version with handlebars. Pretty sweet. I'm not sure if I'm super sold on the design. I think the front lip looks a little funky, and I'm not sure if it really looks like a Tuono. Perhaps the Tuonos are going to receive some sort of stylistic update that match this 457, but typically it's the other way around, where the flagship model gets a big update and then it trickles down. I would have liked to have seen the classic kind of checkmark lights that you see on all of Aprilia's products. The new Tuono 457 looks sort of like 90% of an Aprilia. Now, it's still using the RS457's aluminum frame, which is the only one in the category to have that. It features the same 457cc parallel twin with a 270 crank, making around 48 horsepower. This is a really sweet motor, and it really zings up towards its red line, giving it a super sporty feel. It does have a shorter final drive compared to the RS457, giving it a little bit more punchy acceleration, which is what you want in a naked bike. Other than that, the spec is pretty darn similar to the RS457, so we're not going to spend too much time on this one, but it is cool to see yet another entrant in the 450 beginner sport category, especially in the naked version. It's going to come in at $65.99 MSRP, which is a little bit on the high end, but again, it's an Aprilia. It's got a tons of ride modes and all the sorts of different features you'd expect on a baby Italian naked bike. All right, this is another one I really wanted to talk about. I cannot believe I live in the timeline where Suzuki finally updated the DR-Z400. Yes, Suzuki people, you have waited for so long, and here it is, the DR-Z4S and SM. Did anybody have this on their bingo card for 2024? This has been the wildest year, I swear. It's got a brand new frame and design language that now fits in the mold of all the other products Suzuki's offering. It kind of looks like the new GSX 8S and R models. It kind of stylistically fits the mold for a lot of motorcycles that Suzuki's making, because the DR-Z400 was a nearly 20-year-old design, and it looked really out of date on showroom floors. Truthfully, I thought they were just going to axe it. I really cannot believe Suzuki updated this model. It has a brand new 398cc single-cylinder engine that currently meets Euro 5 Plus emissions compliance and has fuel injection, baby. No more carbureted DR-Z. I can't even believe I'm saying those words. It still has a 5-speed box though, because it's Suzuki, of course it does. It's got a ride-by-wire throttle, switchable modes, which a lot of diehard dual sport enthusiasts say, look, it's a single cylinder that makes less than 40 horsepower. The only mode you need is this. And I do agree to some extent, but in order to modernize the motorcycle and fit in the category, I think Suzuki did a smart thing here. On the 4S, both front and rear ABS can be deactivated, but on the SM, the Supermoto trim, only rear ABS can be deactivated. It's got KYB long travel suspension with preload, rebound, and compression adjustment up at the front and rear, which is great to see. Pretty standard spec for a DR-Z, but it's still a big pig. This motorcycle weighs 330 pounds in S trim and 340 pounds in SM trim. That is super heavy for a dual sport. You typically want to see less than 300 pounds maximum. Now, some people are quick to say, I can't believe it doesn't have a 6-speed box. I'm not going to be able to cruise at 95 miles an hour with my DR-Z400. The new DR-Z4, rather. It's going to take a while to get used to calling it that. But I really think if you're trying to buy a dual sport to go cruise at 90-something miles an hour, you definitely bought the wrong motorcycle. And we have other bikes later in the video we're going to talk about that might fit your bill better if you're trying to do more long-distance travel, but you still want something lightweight that can cut it up off-road. Die-hard old-school DR-Z people and old fogies online have been hating all over the DR-Z4, but I just think it's incredible that we even got an update at all. I think in this day and age, we should be thankful that there's a brand new Japanese dual sport on the market, and it may revitalize the other bikes in the segment. We might finally get a new Yamaha WR. Maybe they'll do a little second mover advantage and see where Suzuki screwed up, and they'll make an even better motorcycle. Maybe Triumph will actually come out with a dual sport variant based on all of their motocross and enduro bikes that they're making right now. So yeah, I think it's super cool. I think it looks cool. Yes, it's a little heavy, but the DR-Z was always heavy. This is not some sort of single track crushing enduro KTM beating machine. I mean, for God's sake, a Husqvarna FE501 weighs like 230 pounds. The DR-Z is 100 pounds heavier. This is genuinely just like a bop around trail going motorcycle, and you have to understand it for what it is. It is not some continental crushing bike. It is not some do everything adventure bike. It's just a fun bop around dual sport, and we finally got one. Pretty sweet. Some people are a little worried it's going to be a little expensive, but that remains to be seen. All right, there was also this insane news from Honda. We have to talk about this. It's not really a motorcycle, but it's the boosted V3 concept. This sounds like the fever dream of some 13-year-old who has no idea what they're talking about, but Honda did put this out at EICMA, and they say that they might pilot it out on larger flagship models. So what the hell is even going on with this thing, and what do I make of it? Well, first of all, I think that Honda definitely bumped up the Adderall and cocaine budget over at Big Red, because for the designers to come up with this, you certainly had to be on some sort of amphetamine, right? It's a 75-degree V3 concept with an electrically driven supercharger turbocharger component. They call it an electric compressor. Basically, it's quite different than a traditional turbocharger, but it's basically doing the same thing of pushing forced air into the motor. Also, Honda does have a storied history of making odd cylinder count V configuration motorcycles. One of their most famous and well-winning motorcycles in MotoGP had a V5 engine in it. And so the V3 is not their first time ever making something like this. And if you think about it from a packaging standpoint, you get the benefits of a parallel twin up front, but you just have this extra cylinder out back. So in theory, you can make a whole lot more power with a motorcycle that's still pretty compact. R&D wise and cost wise, it'll be super duper expensive. I mean, you're talking 2 sets of heads, right? You got one head in the front, one head in the rear. It's probably so complicated keeping that thing in time. And also the fact that it's boosted, it's pretty nuts. Now, an electric compressor mounted on top of the head in the front of a V3 motorcycle is a first in the industry, but I didn't think I need to tell you that. And one of the cool things is an electronic compressor, like I said, it operates independently from the engine. And a supercharger is belt-driven, so that requires revs from the engine. A turbocharger is exhaust-driven, so it requires more revs to push gases through. This means that in theory, an electric compressor would have much less boost lag, if any at all. That means you could get away with making a smaller engine feel like a larger engine. Maybe you could make a 750 V3 that feels more like a 1000 or a 1200. And the good thing is it doesn't need an intercooler, which reduces cost and complexity. But we've already seen stuff like that on the H2. The H2 doesn't have an intercooler either. There's really not much information about this other than Honda being like, yeah, we're still insane and we can design whatever the hell we want whenever we want. Don't forget. It really just feels like a giant flex from Honda just to be like, we can do whatever we want, in case you forgot. But the prototype was mounted in a steel trellis frame, and Honda says that they probably are going to put this in larger displacement motorcycles in the future. I just think it's great. I think for the last few years, all we've seen is freaking giant batteries and stupid EVs. To see a brand new concept internal combustion engine that is something totally new, totally different, really radical, is so cool. It is so heartwarming to see. Okay, switching gears again, we have the king of the copycats, CFMOTO, creating a V4 sport bike concept. Now, we've talked about this in the past, but we're seeing more and more rumors out of it, and it looks like this bike may very well come to fruition. Also, from the concept designs, that thing looks like it's going to take off into space with how big those wings are. That is ridiculous. The engine named is the V.04, and it looks like they're targeting Ducati's V4 in terms of performance and pedigree and just power output and kind of a benchmarking effort. Good luck with that. Ducati's V4 products are just outstanding. It claims to produce 206 horsepower at 14,500 RPM and 84 foot-pounds of torque, which are pretty stout figures. It features a 90-degree bank angle, which is the same as Ducati's, but different from Aprilia's 65-degree that they use on the street-going RSV4 and Tuono models. It also utilizes a counter-rotating crankshaft similar to the Ducati engine to minimize the gyroscopic forces that a big-ass V4 is going to produce. Also, CFMOTO calls this the master of speed concept. So not only are they copying Ducati, but they're also copying Yamaha's marketing, where they say master of torque. This is now the master of speed. CFMOTO, come up with your own shtick. Come on, make your own identity. I say that, but at the same time, CFMOTO's product lineup is one of the most exciting in motorcycling right now, with tiny inline fours, 3 cylinders, V4s, parallel twins. I mean, it's hard to argue with how crazy some of their bikes are. There was no formal release of this model, but I guarantee you in mid-2025, we're probably going to get some sort of prototype bike being teased, and then end of 25 into EICMA 25, we'll probably see official Master of Speed CFMOTO V4 Superbikes. Not something I thought I'd say, but here we go. Although truthfully, that is rife for content. Chinese V4 Superbikes, I will absolutely get one. I will absolutely test it on track and see what it's worth. That's going to be so much fun. Now, I talked about the DR-Z4 in terms of its place in the kind of new age trail bike market, but if you want something that can go longer distance, the baby adventure category has now fully cemented itself. There are so many new bikes in this small pint-sized adventure category. It's really hard to keep up. KTM unveiled 3 new 390 models for 2025, and all of them are off-road oriented in some way. We have the 390 Adventure R, which is a brand new bike. It's not based on any other 390 platform, which is super exciting. It's inspired by the KTM 450 Rally that they ran in Dakar racing, and so it's quite aggressively tuned for off-road riding. It features a new tubular steel frame and a different swing arm that's optimized for off-road riding. And it has a 21-inch front end and an 18-inch out back, making it ideal for off-road conditions. You also have the 390 Enduro R, which is kind of like the Adventure R, but just a little bit similar to what they've done with the 690 platforms. And then you have the 390 SMCR, which is kind of like the Supermoto variant of this platform with the new 17-inch front and rear. There's not a ton of details on the Adventure R and the Enduro R, but you can think of these motorcycles as long-distance, baby, adventure-ready motorcycles. They do use the latest Duke 390 engine, delivering 45 horsepower, and so it is a single cylinder. Those of you who don't want to subdue yourself to a long-distance thumper might want to look at BMW, because they also have a new baby adventure bike. The BMW F450 GS launched, and although this motorcycle isn't quite ready for production, it is a multi-cylinder, small-displacement bike designed for long-distance and off-road riding. Again, this category is getting crazy. You got the Himalayan 450, you got the CFMOTO 450 MT, or whatever they're calling that 450 baby adventure bike, this new BMW, the KTM. We now have 4 motorcycles that are very similar in displacement that are all doing the same thing. That's a category. It's defined. We're here, baby adventure bikes. And it looks a lot like the R1300 GS, and quite frankly, I think that this design language works really well on a smaller motorcycle. The X-shaped headlight, the slimmer gas tank, the whole look of the bike looks really good to my eye. And it's not using a stupid boxer engine. It uses a proper parallel twin that makes sense in 2024. Why would you put a small boxer in it? Makes no sense. The BMW GS is a heritage model. Doesn't make sense. Come at me, I don't care. Now, they're targeting A2 compliance, and this motorcycle makes 48 horsepower, which is a nice amount of power. Now, if that wasn't enough, Kawasaki is also coming out with a baby adventure concept, which I guarantee is going to use the 451cc stroker motor from the Eliminator. It's the KLE 500. That's really interesting. The slogan for this bike is "Life's a rally, ride it," so you already know what it's going to be like. In the display case, they actually had something that said EST 1991, referring to the original KLE 500 that went all the way until 2007 and was replaced with the Versys 650. The teaser showed a 21-inch front end, and the exhaust routing looks just like the current Ninja 500 and Z500 motorcycles, again implying that this motorcycle will use that 451cc engine. Also, the 500 moniker indicates that it's going to use that as well. Potentially Potentially, this is finally going to be a replacement for the venerable Versys X300, and maybe if it's going to lop off the Versys 650 sales, who knows? And will it replace the KLR 650, and is Kawasaki just going to consolidate this all down to the KLE 500? Who can say? Because there's quite a few models in this lineup that are kind of cross-bleeding each other. All right, boys, so which bike are you most excited for? EICMA 2024 was really one for the books. We had a ton of really cool motorcycles. Drop me a comment down below on which one you'd like me to see by next year. I always love getting the brand new models and testing them out and seeing what's what. It's always really fun to try the latest and greatest stuff. And then, of course, give it away to one of you, as I've done for many, many years on the channel. You already know I'm getting an R9. Should we get a V2? Should we get a Chinese V4? Should I get a DR-Z4 and watch my viewership just plummet for a good 2 months? Who can say? Let me know in the comments, and I appreciate you checking out today's video. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll catch you in the next one. See you later.
Oh, I love being here inside of the warm embryonic fluid of Valentino Rossi. Me and him just sharing foods together. Maybe he's gonna eat some pizza or some pasta here in the hills of Tavullia. But you know where else it's nice and warm and cozy is this next episode of Yami Noob. You can click on right over here. I'd love for you to watch it. But anyways, I'm gonna stay here hanging out. Me and him might go onto the track later, but I'll catch you guys later.